Okay, hello everyone. Dr. Tormey here again on Sunday afternoon, coming to you from downtown Murfreesboro, where it's very quiet. This is the video overview for week 7, which begins our third module and also represents the beginning of the middle stages of the term. Um, Normally, we would be preparing for a couple days away from campus and class. With fall break, but in our compressed schedule, we're forging ahead. So we do have a fair amount to cover this week. To begin, I have prepared some notes that I'd encourage you to um, access and open up and have handy to look at as we make our way through this video. It'll be a little bit longer than usual, but hopefully not too much longer. So if you need to pause and get that Word document, you'll find it under the Week 7 review materials on the content page, and I will encourage you to pause right now and get that document opened up and refer to it as we make our way through this. Again, it won't be extra long, but it might be a little bit longer than the last couple of weeks. Okay, so if you have gotten the week 7 module 3 notes, the first couple of sections we've seen before. I've already talked about some of the technological and uh, some of the other social developments that we start seeing in the so-called early modern period, and we're focusing on a couple of contributors from the what's called the Restoration era in English history. So we're focused largely on England for the next week or two, and that won't stay uh, the case, but for now we're focusing on this important stage of scientific historical development. So we've seen that landscape management required new developments and new techniques, and we've seen that with increased merchant traffic and naval traffic, you needed new technologies in shipbuilding and ship piloting and ship defending with weapons, cannons, and firearms of various kinds. Medicine is always a place where um, new techniques and innovations and discoveries are welcome, as is architecture and also food storage and preservation. So these are some of the areas in which some new thinking was welcome, and people were always looking for new ways to improve aspects of the world in these areas, and plenty of other areas as well. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a rough historical timeline, and I'm not going to dwell on this, but you'll hear the phrase Invisible College and Royal Society, and these are organizations that were taking shape and expanding their influence across some otherwise very turbulent and violent stages in English history, beginning with the Civil War, which had been brewing for several decades but kind of took shape in the 1640s. You had the emergence of a figure like Oliver Cromwell, whose Puritans, so-called Roundheads, were opposed to the King Charles I royalists. And in 1648, you had the so-called regicide of Charles I, the execution of the king, and that obviously, that event, which might not surprise us as much today, obviously sent ripples across English history and also through Europe. But in that very turbulent climate, you had improvements in wartime accessories like military technology, weapons, food storage, food preparation, developments of mass production and so forth, but also a lot of interest in making country estates, rural estates more profitable and better equipped to produce the kinds of products that people needed to survive. So key figures were Oliver Cromwell and Charles I. And then as a result of Cromwell's victory, you had his emergence as the so-called Lord Protector over the course of the next decade in what's called the Interregnum. And within that time, you had a real shifting of English society. The customary nobility and aristocrats were sort of put to the side, and you had a new group of people running the country, and this also facilitated the pursuit of more practical sciences, and one important figure in this development was named Samuel Hartley. I'm covering this material because these are players that we might, names we might encounter as we move forward. And then lastly, and most importantly, in the Restoration, you had Charles II, who had been in exile, coming back to England and reassuming uh, the English throne after Cromwell's death under normal circumstances. I spent some time with this, but it's a period in which you had the ideal concepts of social structure restored. One outgrowth was the formation of the so-called Royal Society, which grew out of Hartley's Invisible College, but was an actual organization devoted to innovations, improvements, and the advancement of scientific pursuits. And in that you had Robert Boyle, who we'll look at in just a moment, Christopher Wren, Henry Oldenburg, and also Isaac Newton figuring in this very important organization. So that's the historical background. That's a bit about the world in which Boyle and Newton were influential. Also, I should note that you have a video which explains the development of the Royal Society. This video gets boring after a little while, and its relevance isn't immediately clear, but the first part of it is especially useful in explaining the history behind the development of the Royal Society, whose slogan, Nullis in verba, take nothing in face value, is pointing to a need for experiment and demonstration and factual determination in ways that represent a real transition in the method of scientists to determine new facts and new truths. One of the key figures was Robert Boyle, and if you scroll down, you see the Boyle's Law, which you might have encountered in high school biology or chemistry, that deals with the measurements relating to pressure of and volume of gases under a consistent temperature, and this little diagram which kind of conveys that information. That is something that you might have experimented with. Robert Boyle is also known for what's called the corpuscular philosophy. We talked some about atomism and the way in which it sort of gradually disappeared and became hidden and then was rediscovered. And Boyle happened to be very much an atomist and saw it as one of his main goals to reconcile atomism and Christianity. So the reading that you're asked to look at for this week speaks to that particular effort to reconcile the ancient philosophy with Christian belief and practice. Okay, so that's the first part. Then we get to Isaac Newton, and this is where it gets kind of fun. You'll see in your textbook in the reading a little diagram very much like the one I've got here on the left, the thought experiment of Newton's canon, which is basically explains the operations of planetary motion and gravity. And the way I like to present this to students is as the beginnings of space travel. And so you'll see a lot of uh, attention to this diagram and some explanation of how it works. And I've linked you to a video that conveys that conceptually. So if Newton's writing is a bit opaque, then that's an alternative. Newton's best known work, his Principia, includes some of this information, and is also, his famed laws of motion, which are also explained in the course materials that I've linked you to, and some of the other materials. Now, there's this JPEG of space travel, which I happened to locate in a Scientific American magazine a couple semesters ago. And one of the things I'd like you to do is to look at first the thought experiment of Newton's cannon, and then the diagram of the various stages of the lunar landing back in the late 1960s, early 70s, um, and the really the beginnings of space travel and the ways in which Newton's laws are very much at the front and center of the whole exercise of getting astronauts to the moon and then back to Earth safely. And one of the interesting dimensions to this is the clip that I've linked you to the movie Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks, best known for the phrase that everybody recognizes, "Houston, we have a problem." People recognize the phrase, they don't often recognize where it comes from. It is from the fated Apollo 13 mission, where the astronauts did manage to get back to Earth safely, but had to abort their second mission to the moon. And the dynamics of Newton's laws and Kepler's laws of planetary motion figured prominently in that whole episode in the history of space travel. So that's enough to get us started. I'll probably be adding a few odds and ends to these notes, but at the very least, as I'm recording this now, they are enough to provide some context for the materials. And when we do meet on Wednesday, I'll perhaps have some additional things that I've added to them. But other than that, I hope that gets you started. This is some interesting and important material for our purposes. We might be coming back to it as we move forward into the third module. But I hope that is a helpful introduction, and I'll look forward to seeing everybody on Wednesday via Zoom. So take care and have a good start to your week.